It's pedal to the metal, keeping on that grind. Gotta keep it moving, never looking behind the story. It's the blade and the sparks, they gonna fly. There's beauty in the making when you're taking your time. Sure as heck beats working 9 to 5. It's easy when you love it and you're busy living that sharp life. It's easy when you love it and you're busy living that sharp life. All right.
So do you I mean, I know we've got some knives laid out here, because I mean, we've kind of worked our way. Now, okay, before we look at the stuff that's on the table, you've got production models that are out now, and you've had other production models. So what was the first knife that became a production model?
The first one that I did, it's a long, interesting story. I'll try to make it as short and concise as possible. I was at a SHOT Show, and I had made friends with Sal Glesser. We were getting, I'll never forget this, we were up at the hot dog stand, we were getting hot dogs for lunch, and Sal was kind of lamenting the fact that he couldn't get any custom knife makers to design a knife for him. He really wanted to have a Spyderco designed by somebody who was making custom knives. And I said, how come? He said, well, the Spyderco knife has to have a hole in the blade. That's our trademark. That's our brand. That's what signifies a Spyderco knife, and it's our patent, and we have to have it. And most knife makers don't like to put a big hole in their blade. I said, I understand, Sal. I know I've been telling you for years you make the ugliest knives on the market. He said, well, could you? I said, well, yeah, if you want, I'll design a knife for you. He said, really? I said, yeah, why not? So this was 1989. And I came up with a design. It had kind of a sheep's foot blade, very nice design. It's an everyday carry size, about 3.5 inches. So Sal said, okay, it looks like we're going to do it. So this was the first Terzuola knife that became a production knife. I happen to have one.
So you have in the original box even.
I happen to have one here. This was given to me on my 70th birthday. We had a big party in Albuquerque. Sal and his wife Gail came down, and somehow or other, they dug one of these out of their vault, and they engraved it here. Happy 70th. And they gave me this for my 70th birthday.
That's awesome.
Okay, so this was known as the C15. Sal's, now this actually is kind of a historic knife, and here's the reason why. Sal said, what are your requirements for this knife? How would you like to see it made? And I said, well, first of all, I'd like to see it made in the United States. Up until then, all of the Spyderco knives were being made in Japan, Seiki City, Japan. They weren't making any here. I said I would like it made in the United States. I said, number two, I would like the blade to be made out of ATS 34, which is the same as 154 CM, which is a steel that I had been using. Bob Lovelace was the one who introduced it. But it's a steel that can't be stamped. It's a highly resilient steel, space age. They developed it for the turbine blades on the 747 engine, and it doesn't stamp well. And blades up to that point, now remember this is 1989, blades on all knives up to that point, production knives, were stamped out of large sheets of steel. I said, by now I had been using a laser cutter in Phoenix to cut my blades out. I was the first knife maker to have any parts made, cut out by laser. I said, and I told Sal, I said, you can get the parts cut by laser. Don't worry about that. I can turn you on to a company. There's lots of people that can do it. He said, okay. But the ATS-34 was an expensive steel also. He said, what other requirements do you have? I said, basically, I would like it to be a liner lock, because that's my signature. That's Michael Walker's signature. No other knife made by production anywhere in the world had a liner lock. None. This was the first knife to use a liner lock, first production knife to use ATS-34 steel, first production knife to have the blades cut out by laser, and first production knife after this anodized aluminum to use G10. We started about a year later, we started using G10 on this. And once again, it was the first production knife ever to use G10. So Sal said, okay, we'll do all those things. And we looked around for somebody, and we found nobody wanted to make it. None of the companies, Western, Camillus, nobody wanted to even try making a liner lock. So we found Les Diaz's, who had previously had Pacific Cutlery, and he wanted to open up a little knife shop.
So for you guys that don't know, Pacific Cutlery turned into Gerber Knives? No, Benchmade.
No, they went bankrupt. Pacific went bankrupt. I'll tell you what they did turn it into. Les Diaz's had Pacific, and they went bankrupt. He lost that company, and we got hold of him in between, and he agreed to make the knives. And he set up a little shop in Portland, I believe it was, Portland, Oregon. And the story gets complicated after that, but basically, this knife, the C15 from Spyderco, was the first knife that the Benchmade knife company ever made. And the Benchmade knife company now has become, everybody knows them as really high quality, very finely made, excellent pocket knives. But this was the first one, and they got their start with the Terzuola C15 for Spyderco.
So Bob Terzuola and Sal Glesher basically started Benchmade. You guys were the impetus for Benchmade.
We gave them the kit to start it.
Yep.
Yeah, and they actually started off as a little storefront in Portland with a workbench, and I believe there were 3 guys putting the knife parts together. That was it.
That could be the origin of the name. They were made on the bench.
Benchmade, yeah.